After his second removal from power, Milton Obote's life became a journey of exile, reflection, and resilience. Twice President of Uganda, twice ousted in violent coups, Obote's story is one of triumphs, betrayals, and survival. And yet, in his final hours, lying on a hospital bed in Johannesburg, he whispered words that stunned even those who knew him best: "I forgive my enemy." The flight into exile, on July 27, 1985, Obote's second presidency ended abruptly when his army commander, Lieutenant General Tito Okello Latwa, and Brig Basilio Olara Okello staged a coup. The warning signs had been clear the night before. Inside Parliament, Obote had been warned of assassination plots. His aides begged him to flee, but he resisted. "No way," he said firmly. "If these fellows want the chair, let them come and kill me from here." It was only after relentless pleading from his ministers and security chiefs that Obote relented. Under the cover of night, he was bundled into a black Mercedes-Benz 600, escorted by loyal guards, and driven out of Kampala. His convoy dodged roadblocks and renegade soldiers, his aides bribing and bluffing their way through. By the time the sun rose, Obote had crossed into Kenya, his second exile beginning with exhaustion, fear, and heartbreak. From Nairobi, he addressed Ugandan exiles: "I left Uganda because of a problem. Some of you are a security risk if you return. Those who think they can go back safely, please do that. I have been given a plane by President Kenneth Kaunda to go to Zambia. Those of you who want to continue with me to Zambia, you are most welcome." It was clear then, exile was not a choice but a necessity. Finding refuge in Zambia, Obote's longtime ally, Zambia's President Kenneth Kaunda, welcomed him. Initially housed at the Lusaka State Lodge, Obote eventually moved to Plot 15, Danduza Chisidza Road, a house once occupied by Zimbabwe's Joshua Komu during his own exile. Though far from his homeland, Obote built a life in Zambia. He was a man of habits: mornings filled with newspapers and political analysis, evenings spent playing Scrabble with close companions Peter Ogwang, Charles Okecho, and Wilson Oda. A glass of Portuguese Mateus wine often rested by his side, and his baritone voice carried the hymn to Kutendariza Yesu through the walls of his home. Yet behind this routine was a man burdened by loss. Exile had stripped him of the presidency, the closeness of his people, and, in some ways, his sense of destiny. But it had not stripped him of hope, a life of visitors and memories. Obote's home in Lusaka became a meeting place for African liberation leaders. Oliver Tambo of the ANC visited in 1987. Indian Prime Minister Narasimha Rao stopped by in 1991. He exchanged letters with excommunicated Archbishop Emmanuel Melingo, with whom he had forged a friendship years earlier. Still, Obote lived in a delicate balance of prominence and isolation. He was respected across Africa but vilified at home. For some Ugandans, he remained a hero of independence, the man who had led the country from colonial rule. For others, he was remembered for the turbulence, authoritarianism, and civil wars of his rule. It was in exile that he abandoned smoking in 2003, confessing regret for ignoring doctors' warnings 2 decades earlier. He still believed he might one day return, but as years passed, even he seemed to recognize that exile was permanent. Hopes of a return. In August 2005, Obote stunned Ugandans by announcing his intention to step down as leader of the Uganda People's Congress, UPC. Rumors swirled that he would finally return to Uganda, perhaps to pass the torch to a new generation. Reports in September 2005 suggested that the former president might set foot in his homeland before the end of the year. For supporters, the news was electrifying. Could it be that after 20 years of exile, Obote would come home, not as a leader, but as a statesman and elder? Sadly, fate had other plans. His final days, in early September 2005, Obote's health began to decline. Kidney complications worsened, and on September 9 he was flown to Morningside Clinic in Johannesburg, South Africa. Doctors struggled to stabilize him. An X-ray revealed a missing kidney, puzzling them had it been removed in a past surgery. Dialysis became a daily ritual. Even in illness, Obote remained himself. On October 7, while receiving dialysis, he asked nurses for peas to eat. It was a small, simple request, but one that showed his longing for normalcy. Just minutes later, before they could serve him, he slipped into a coma. For 3 days, machines kept him alive. His wife Miria, his children, and close aides gathered by his bedside. They prayed, whispered encouragement, and hoped for a miracle. But on October 10, 2005, at 8 p.m., doctors pronounced him dead. He was 79 years old. His last words, in those final days, Obote had been reflective. He spoke quietly to his family and aides, his voice weakened but still carrying the conviction of a leader who had endured storms. Among his last words were these: "I forgive my enemy." No names were mentioned. Perhaps he was forgiving Tito Okello and Basilio Olara Okello, the men who had toppled him in 1985. Perhaps he was forgiving Idi Amin, whose brutal coup in 1971 had driven him into his first exile. Or perhaps he was forgiving all who had maligned, betrayed, or opposed him throughout his turbulent career. What mattered most was the spirit behind the words. After decades of political strife, exile, and personal suffering, Milton Obote's last message was not vengeance, but forgiveness. The journey home. After his death, Obote's body was taken to Dove's funeral home in Johannesburg before being flown to Lusaka. There, a requiem mass was held at Holy Cross Cathedral, attended by Zambia's President Levi Mwanawasa, as well as Frederick Chiluba and Kenneth Konda. From Lusaka, the body was flown to Uganda. On October 25, 2005, amid tears and mixed emotions, Milton Obote was laid to rest at Abibuti village in Akakoro, Epak district, beside the graves of his parents. Thousands attended the burial, supporters, critics, dignitaries, and ordinary citizens. Some came to mourn, others to reflect, and some merely to witness the closing chapter of a man who had shaped Uganda's destiny. Legacy of a controversial statesman, Obote's life remains one of contradictions. He was Uganda's independence executive prime minister, a nationalist who helped wrest the country from British rule. He was twice president, shaping Uganda's politics for over 2 decades. Yet his rule was marred by repression, economic collapse, then civil conflict. For his supporters, he was a visionary whose ideas outlived him. For his critics, he was a symbol of lost opportunities. But for history, Obote will always be remembered as a man who carried the weight of a nation's hopes and failures on his shoulders. His life in exile was not one of bitterness, but of resilience. Stripped of office, forced from his homeland, and mocked by enemies, he lived with dignity, surrounded by books, hymns, and the company of comrades. And his final words, "I forgive my enemy," are perhaps the most enduring part of his legacy. They remind us that even in the twilight of life, reconciliation is possible. Conclusion: Milton Obote's exile was long and often lonely, but it revealed the depth of his resilience. He endured betrayal, humiliation, and the pain of separation from his country. Yet in the end, he chose peace